All right, welcome to the Ravit Show. It's day 2 at Gartner, and I'm super excited to be with Edward. Edward, welcome to the Ravit Show.
Thank you.
Super excited to chat with you today about various things in data, AI, and much more. But just for our audience, would you like to quickly introduce yourself? Tell us more about what you do at IBM.
Sure. I'm the Vice President of Product Management for Watsonx.data, which is our lakehouse for Gen AI.
Yeah.
Previously, I helped launch the Watsonx platform about 2 years ago, and before that, I managed our databases portfolio, so historic brands like DB2, Netezza, and Informix.
That's fantastic. We've all been hearing talking to a lot of enterprise leaders out here. You've been talking to customers, prospects, analysts. You've been giving talks. I'm kind of curious, what are you most excited about? What is the common messaging that you've been seeing around data, lakehouse? What are people talking about?
Yeah. Well, I'm most excited about the progress that the industry is making, right? If
Yeah.
you think about where we were 2 years ago and where we are now, it is unrecognizable. We used to be just excited about having a conversation with a model, right? Now we're talking about agents, we're talking about reasoning models,
Very
we're
true.
talking about customizing Gen AI with your data, right?
Yeah.
And we think that is the critical next phase. It is how do enterprises leverage models that are effectively trained on the same publicly available data to incorporate their own data, right?
Yeah.
And that's really what makes all the difference. That's how they drive enterprise value, and that's how they achieve greater productivity and market share.
That's awesome, and you made a very good point around that. I'm kind of also curious to see how do you see the relationship between data quality and AI to succeed over the years. How have you seen that relationship?
Yeah, I mean, garbage in, garbage out is still the golden rule, right? So good data, whether it's the data they're using to train the model,
Yep.
tune the model, ground the model, and retrieval augmented generation, that is still essential, right? So data quality, really the starting point, right? And we think about data for AI, and we also think about AI for data.
For data.
So using
Okay.
Gen AI to improve data quality, to do semantic enrichment, right? To do automated discovery of data, conversational BI, text to SQL, right? So there's all sorts of AI for data use cases that are coming up as well.
That's fantastic. AI for data and data for AI,
Yeah.
which is a good analogy for sure, but it also kind of helps become the data much more cleaner, better for AI. So yeah, that's awesome. I'm also kind of curious to learn a little about what's one of the biggest misconceptions that you see companies have when it comes to their data for AI.
Yeah.
Can you share anything?
Yeah, I think the biggest misconception that I'm seeing right now is that we're treating structured data and unstructured data like if they were different, right? So we're creating more data silos, right? Data silos is already a big problem, particularly in structured data, environments.
Yep.
And now we think about unstructured data really as the critical data for Gen AI.
Yep.
And they're really the same thing. Okay, and let me explain that, right?
Yeah.
So unstructured data is really important for retrieval augmented generation, for informational retrieval, semantic search, document Q&A. But if you really want to improve the accuracy of that, and you really want to automate business processes beyond information retrieval, you need to incorporate structured data.
Yeah,
You need to
exactly.
incorporate text to SQL, right? You need to have integrated governance across structured and unstructured. So treating them as two different domains is a mistake. You need to be basically work together with both of them.
Okay, that's pretty good insight there. And I'm kind of also curious to learn a little about, since you talk to so many customers and so many enterprise leaders out there, what is one common messaging that you hear from them which you feel is pretty interesting, but there can be much more into the game?
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody is pretty happy with their pilots. Okay, everybody's pretty happy with the investments that they've made over the last, call it 18 months, 12 months, right? And they had one use case, and it could be like Salesforce automation, sales and marketing content generation, right? Technical support, right? HR, back office, right? All sorts of great use cases and enterprise jobs to be done, right? That have benefited from improved productivity of using Gen AI, right?
Yep.
But that's just the tip of the iceberg, right? Information retrieval is just the tip of the iceberg, right? When we really
True.
want to get into automating business processes, that's where a lot of these accuracy challenges, governance challenges, simplicity at scale challenges
Yeah.
start to arise. I think enterprises have realized that, right? And they're saying, all right, I want to keep going. What are the next enabling technologies that I need to incorporate?
Yeah, that's pretty good. You touched on a very important topic, which is about security and governance, and we've kind of also heard it in the keynote. I was listening to it, and I was like, they have kind of mentioned it and highlighted it pretty well. That enterprise leaders are kind of obviously looking at something like this very closely now, with all the importance that they know in data and AI, obviously,
Yeah.
data for AI. So it makes a lot of sense. I'm kind of also curious to learn a little about where do you see the space moving, not only just for the Lakehouse, but in general in the next, say, 1 year, one and a half year.
Yeah, well, maybe let me answer that in two steps. I
Yeah.
think the Lakehouse, right? Because we've been talking about Gen AI a lot, but I think stepping back and looking at the data foundation, right? And that data foundation
Very important.
being the Lakehouse, I think that may have been disruptive a few years ago, right? When we were still thinking about lakes and warehouses and lakehouses. The Lakehouse is it, right? And I am biased, I'll admit it, but I think the Lakehouse is the data platform for the future. Commodity cloud object storage, open table formats, open metadata, open source query engines. That is the strongest, most price performant, most interoperable, right? Data foundation you can have. So now that we've got that foundation, we want to use it for Gen AI, right?
Very true.
And to use it for Gen AI, you have to have flexibility, right? Flexibility on the ingest side, so you're
Very
able to
true.
connect to these unstructured data sources, process that, put it into vector stores, put it into iceberg tables, put it into graph database, put it into a NoSQL database. So the definition of what the Lakehouse includes is expanding, right?
Love
now
it.
that we've gotten into Gen AI as a workload, beyond traditional data engineering, traditional BI, right? If we want to address Gen AI, we want to do it with the Lakehouse because we believe in those fundamental principles, but we have to incorporate this new capability into that integrated platform.
Love it. I'm kind of also wanting to know a little about any use case that you can share with our audience around this. You don't need to name the customer, but maybe if you can share anything that you've kind of come across and you were like, this is the reason why Data Lakehouse kind of works out pretty well
Yeah.
for larger enterprises that you all cater to.
Yeah, well, this is a really relatable one. I don't know if you're a tennis player, but the work we do with the U.S. Open is, I think, some of the most relatable and fun applications of the Lakehouse architecture and Gen AI. And let me tell you what it's about. So there's thousands and millions of data points from a tennis match, right?
Yeah.
In, out, fault, right? Score, net, right? All that's being captured, and that's a lot of big data that you have to incorporate. You put that in the Lakehouse, right? But then there's all sorts of unstructured data, fan reactions, right? What people are saying on social media, expert commentary. These are other language and sentiment analysis that you're also capturing. You bring those two together, you get what we call player momentum scores. So
Yeah.
think about it like a machine learning model. You're kind of predicting the future. In this case, you're predicting who's going to win the match, who's going to win the tournament, right? And you're getting a much better prediction because you're incorporating structured and unstructured data. You're using AI to do it, and it just results in a better fan experience, right?
Wow.
It helps advance the sport and the brand.
I love it. I love how real these use cases are because it kind of helps us and our audience to also understand and get into the depth of it. Thanks for that, Edward. One last question for you is if people want to reach out to you, learn more about the things that you're doing in the space, if you're socially active, where can they follow you, learn the different things, and also come to you to ask many questions around data lakehouse, data quality AI.
I would say I'm semi-socially active.
Okay, awesome.
So I definitely use LinkedIn
Nice.
a lot. That's probably the best way to reach me, or ecalvesbert@ibm.com. I mean, old school email also works.
Amazing. That's awesome. Edward, such a pleasure to chat with you on the Ravit Show. You've been doing amazing work in this space. You've had a talk which went pretty well. That's what I'm assuming, and that's what I've heard.
I hope
So, which is great. We'll keep the conversation going, and it was such a pleasure to host you.
Same here. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us today.